Who was watching Lopez versus Lopez? Asked Sarlos Cantana. And although I don't have really any answers, I am completely enthralled with Sarlos's latest post here on his site. We will have the links to his Substack, all that good stuff. Latino Slant, make sure you are subscribed. I always love independent thinkers, people doing it on their own, giving voice to just like, hey, what's up with this? And Sarlos, man, he does not disappoint. Who's watching Lopez versus Lopez? He dares to ask. Recently, NBC sitcom Lopez versus Lopez was renewed for a third season. This came as a surprise because, for the life of me, I couldn't tell you who actually is watching the show or who the audience is supposed to be. Comedian turned actor producer George Lopez has been in the spotlight recently, and for all the wrong reasons. But if recent news and the comments on his social media are anything to go by, it seems odd that his current TV show is doing so well. Admittedly, Sarlo says, I'm not a fan of the show. I've tried multiple times, he says, to watch clips from the series, but every time I do, they are never funny. They are what the kids called cringe, and I hate that feeling when it's supposed to be something that allegedly represents me. I also know that I am not the target demographic for the show, but surely there are people out there who will watch it. But who? Clearly, NBC thinks someone is. Otherwise, why renew it? I too went through season 1, and I will say I have yet to finish season 1. I think I'm like 12 or 14 episodes halfway through the first season. It's got 2 seasons now. That each episode was getting better and better, if that makes sense. I also want to say that this brand of 3-camera setup in front of a live studio audience, sitcom television, is the most difficult to pull off. The champs of this, probably in my book, is the TV show Cheers. You want to see some sitcom acting genius writing? Watch all the old episodes of Cheers, all the seasons. It's on Netflix, I believe, or you can find it streaming somewhere. Pure gold, guys. That's the standard. So anything, whether it's Latino or Black, I don't know what, it needs to meet that standard. It's got to come close. So, I'm gonna say also, I'm just gonna say that because you have to be a highly skilled actor, comedian to pull that type of I Love Lucy level type of stuff. It's not easy. It's not. It's really difficult. Reviews on IMDb are polar opposite. People either hate the show or think it's God's gift to sitcom TV. I tend to think the people who profess they love the show are either fake or delusional. According to NBC, the show recently reached nearly 10 million total viewers across all platforms. And in the words, it's the highest indexing broadcast programming among English-dominant Hispanic households. Okay, well, that's not a lot of viewers, guys. Nearly reaching, I mean, those are numbers that on a bad night, House of Dragons makes. And NBC across all platforms, they have more than one platform. So yeah, it's those are not killer numbers per se. In House of Dragons, just with one episode on 2 platforms at the most, HBO and Max. So there's a little context there. Okay, again, surprising. And just who are those people in the so-called English-dominant Hispanic households, and why are they watching this awful program? And what the F does that even mean? How the F would NBC know if a household is English-dominant and who qualifies as Hispanic to the network? Question. Well, it's kind of easy, man. They Nielsen does that because that's how they get their data, and that's how they share data, because they know who has the Nielsen boxes, who has the ratings, and the ethnic demographic of their households. Lopez versus Lopez is not funny. Full stop. Full stop. George Lopez's old show, which seems ancient now, his old talk show, and of course his old stand-up, were hilarious. That's what made Lopez Lopez and why he is where he is today. His short-lived show, Lopez, which ran 24 episodes in 2016, was funny, and it was unapologetically Chicano. Sadly, It did not vie with the network the way his current show does. That's telling because the old show was, in my Chicano opinion, authentic. His new show is puro pedo. Puro pedo, guys, that's slang for, well, literally pure farts. So, puro pedo. The old show's tagline read, too rich to go back to his working class Latino roots and too brown to feel comfortable in his affluent celebrity life. Being George Lopez comes with many problems. That's the George Lopez we all know, and it's about as far as from whatever his current show is, and about as you can get. Sorry. He also didn't look like the Mexican Albert Einstein back then either. Lopez did not become one of the most well-known Chicano comics by cowering from hecklers, looking like a slob, painting his nails, or letting his family belittle him weekly on network TV. Here we go, guys. The old George was chingon. That means badass, but a little bit more expletive. LVL comes off as a show that exists to do two things. You guys ready? One, treat an aging and continually out of touch George Lopez as a human pinata for everyone to beat the crap out of for fake laughs. Two, serve as a network approving nepotism vehicle to shoehorn his unlikable daughter into showbiz. No one asked for Maya Lopez, and if we're being brutally honest here, she would not be on TV were it not for her famous dad. Okay, I am going to push back a little bit. Not on the person's talent, not on the person's personality or this person personally. Maya Lopez, right? I'm going to push back because this entire town, right? People get ahead, people make strides because of nepotism. There's a lot of that. There's a lot about that in regular industries, in regular businesses. And son, what do you think and son is? And son and daughters are nepotism, whether it's collecting junk or an accountant firm or a television show. So nepotism doesn't bother me because it's all over in all types of businesses. It's, can you deliver? Are you delivering? And in this example, are you delivering week after week on your television show that you are the star of, that you're an executive producer of? Because you at the least have to deliver because you got in from your father and your mother's connects. So now you have to maybe even double that. You have to wow us. So it is a cautious pushback on that, Sarlos. But hey man, bravo to bringing this up. Because no one else is, no other publications or Latino media sites will have the bolas to even bring this stuff up, man. It's just a lot of puff pieces, a lot of people awarding, giving awards to themselves, making up awards, creating fake awards for what? There's more awards, more panelists, more webinars, more seminars than there is Latino shows out there of merit. Put all your money and energy into that. But I will say this as well. Having known some of the co-stars on this show, you have to give George Lopez and company the full props for hiring Latinos in front of and behind the camera, because that is a rarity in TV sitcom. That never happens. So I give total respect and props to that, regardless of what I think of the product. Because those hopefully writers, directors, and people in front of the camera will graduate to other work. Woo, we getting hot. So hot, some fun tonight. Woo, we're going to have some fun tonight. Okay, here we go. Her acting chops are god awful, and the chemistry between her and her dad on screen is terrible. It's insane to me that the people who are shelling out the cash to fund this dreck are watching it and going, oh yeah, this works. This is funny. Many of the reviewers on IMDb call for Mayan's character to be recast. So I know it's not just me who cannot stand her. She sucks. Her character is insufferable, mean-spirited, and a lead puncher, with her dad serving as a human punching bag on the show, and no amount of celeb cameos can fix that. The show is supposed to be lighthearted, take on the real-life Lopez family dysfunction, but truth be told, it's just thinly veiled dysfunction set to a god-awful laugh track. On some level, the show feels like a kind of penance that St. George is self imposing for the numerous sins he's committed against his family over the years. And just how does St. George repay his debt? By self flagellating himself before the network and the 10 million viewer audience, and in an effort to help his daughter. This is the only That's the only way this show and the current iteration of George Lopez, the person, makes any sense to me, Sarlos says. Still, it must have some kind of fan base unless NBC's trying somehow to force the show into success at a loss, though that seems very highly unlikely. It's actually not. Let me tell you something, Sarlos. In covering Hollywood television and film studios, they NBC, like Disney, like a lot of these big, huge corporations, they are too big to fail. Even if the show is failing, they'll keep it going for a few years just to say that they did. And like again, I said, 10 million is not huge numbers when you compare it to these other television shows. Okay, right on, man. He's really slinging it. I got to give him respect. Look, the only way I can rationalize any of this is by comparing modern day George Lopez to modern day Howard Stern. Stern, like Lopez, was completely and totally different a few decades ago. Both men built their audiences by being raw, unapologetic, and politically incorrect, both using edgy and vulgar humor to pave their way to prominence. Though Lopez was not nearly as vulgar as Stern. No, he wasn't. Even still, they were unafraid. Today, both men are unrecognizable from their former selves, and both pretend the people they used to be never existed. It's no surprise then that both of their fan bases have noticed are extremely unhappy. Yet both men have completely different fan bases now, most of which consist of people who were either not fans in the old days, or either don't know or don't care about who they used to be, or old fans who hate the current version, are bitterly clinging to the idea of the old one. Star Wars fans, sounds familiar. For Stern, this is completely ridiculous, as his excuse is, I was out of my mind back then. Stern absolutely revels in crapping on his former fan base in lieu of his newfound woke status. We're going to go back to Stern and wrap it up with my assessment on this in a second. But with Lopez, a guy who has a rarity among celebrities because he was always unapologetically Chicano and seemed to revel in just being another vato. He seems to want his cake and eat it too now, and his old fans are not having it. In fact, most of them can't stand him now. As far as I can tell, no one likes the new George Lopez. Truth be told, the old George Lopez would rip the new one apart deep down, and he knows that. It's well written all over his face. And yet, the show was renewed for a third season. If Lopez is to believe, it's also up for more than one award. Again, this is not all that different from Stern, who has recently renewed its series for a ridiculous amount of money despite being despised by his fans. This begs to question then, who the hell is watching Lopez versus Lopez? I couldn't tell you. The show, in my opinion, seems forced. George seems forced, as if someone is making him do all of this, but that would be a convenient excuse. The new show seems to be an industry pet project for pats on the back and diversity accolades by those in the industry. Absolutely 100% it is. I don't buy the 10 million viewer stat from the NBC, but I do think some people are watching the show. I also think that most of them are probably not Chicano and certainly not George Lopez old fans. You hit it right on the mark, brother. If you look up who actually creates the show, you'll find a myriad of diversity, and that would be great if the show is actually funny and if it actually related to Chicanos on some level. Spoiler, it doesn't. The show was created by Debbie Wolf, the daughter of a Salvadorian immigrant mother and a Jewish father. Wolf, raised in Miami, uses the words like Latine and Latinx, and that tells you all you really need to know about who's making Lopez versus Lopez and who they're aiming for. I think our industry fails to recognize that Latine people are not a monolith, Wolf says in an interview. And while I agree with you, the very use of Latine and industry tells me that the execs at the network are banking on pushing a show that actually does appeal to a monolith, a woke one, that craps all over everything from the past. It would be one thing if LVL was a funny Chicano-centric show. And honestly, I could see 90s George Lopez doing that, but it's not. LPL feels like simple pandering. It feels like the network checking off a box and patting itself on the back for doing so. And it feels like it could be titled That Hispanic Show. And I know we're supposed to be celebrating our wins, rah rah rah, but this show just feels like BS. I might feel differently if George Lopez was just another milk toast Latino celeb, but that's not who he was or how he built his fan base. If LVL were unapologetically Chicano, then that would be something worth celebrating, but it's anything but. It's just more pandering and being celebrated as authentic by people who see us as nothing more than a checkbox. And George Lopez is helping them every step of the way, paying that price in order to get to set up his daughter. Lopez versus Lopez feels fake, forced, and hollow, which is a shame because it has a lot of brown faces on it. Despite that, the network of the or its creators say it's not FUBU, for us, by us. They won't allow that. Personally, I will take something unapologetic and authentic over something to check a box any day. And we'll pass on Lopez versus Lopez and anything else Hollywood tries to desperately force. Wow. Ho, ho, ho. Woo. Well, I have two things just to say, but right now you need to start commenting. Make sure you are subscribed to the Latino Slant. Have you seen Lopez versus Lopez? Have you seen? Are you a fan? Do you watch? Have you watched every episode? Have you just watched a couple and kind of faded off? I will tell you right now, before I get to my two big comments, I will tell you right now that whatever show I watch, like be it a Shogun, I don't know what, if I haven't gotten through it and I haven't gotten back to finish it, chances are I'm never going to get back to it, and whether it just wasn't appealing to me, I had to kickstart myself to see this a couple times just because we are the Latino Slant. I wanted to give it a fair shake. So like I told you, some episodes were funny. They got better and better, but that was through a lot of cringe, very wooden acting, very poor execution. Where yeah, I too saw the constant flogging of the George Lopez character, and that brings me to my 2 points, and I'm going to get out of here. If this show is about a modern daughter taking the piss out of her old school father because of patriarchy and in the name of because of he's a misogynist, I want nothing to do with it. I want nothing to do with it. It's got to be balanced. When I first heard about this show, the balance sound was there on paper. It's like, oh yeah, he's like a crotchety old Chicano, and then she's like, up and comer, Gen Z or whatever. But there's balance. I like that, and they can take the piss out of each other. But if it's one way, yeah. And I think I was feeling that a little bit when I was watching it, and I didn't like that as well. Now here's my other point. Like Howard Stern and George Lopez, um, Jackie the Joke Man Martling, who was a part of Howard Stern's original crew back in the day in the radio show, was recently interviewed by Chris Gore in the Film Threat. And they asked him, like, what do you feel about Howard Stern's change? Like, he's totally turned around about who he was back then. And the Joke Man just said, look, he hasn't changed. He was always the same guy. Since you didn't know it, he always wanted to be with the in crowd. And perhaps, like Stern, Lopez just always wanted to be with the in crowd. So, I can't say 100% one way or the other. I can tell you that George Lopez single-handedly has hired a lot of Latinos behind the camera, behind the scenes in the industry. So I wouldn't be honest with you if I was to say he doesn't do shit for La Raza. That's not true. He actually continues to do a lot for La Raza, and that is probably a big that's a big up for me. Now, does that mean that he gets a pass because this work is not good? No, absolutely not. Everything's up for criticism when you put it up there, especially if I'm paying for it. And at the end of the day, all our television and movies and TV shows, we pay for it through our streaming, through our cable, etc., etc. So Sarlos has a 100% right to bring this up, and then being Chicano, you know, this goes back to having a creative vision for your show and having the creative guts to be actually so specific in the identity of the family that everyone will enjoy that family. Sanford and Son, case in point. All in the Family, case in point. They become timeless, and yet they were unapologetically black, unapologetically curmudgeon-y, white man. Fantastic stuff. That's what I'm talking about. But you have to have the creative muscle to pull that off. It takes a lot of talent. I want to know what you guys think. My name is Paulie. This is the Latino Slant. Make sure you also, too, are subscribed to Sarlos Cantana's Substack. I've been a subscriber. Wherever you're at, keep that same fuerte. Gracias.